You can be a leader no matter where you are in the organization and where you sit. You don't have to be the quote, the boss to be a leader.
Welcome to the Going North podcast, where you will be informed, encouraged, and empowered to embrace your dreams and advance in life through authorship. I'm your host, best-selling author of the book Stay the Course, and certified leadership trainer, DomBrightmon. Be sure to check out the goods and services from every guest, as well as the host himself, yours truly. Now let the fun begin. Today's episode is sponsored by both books, Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself, and the follow-up bestseller, Stay the Course, The Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. Head over to Amazon.com, pick up both books. They are available in a trifecta of paperback, audio, and ebook. Cop all three of both and be on the lookout for another book from yours truly to help podcasters succeed. Now let's get on with today's episode. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as GMP, the great, glorious, and glamorous, it's the Going North podcast. We got another super special, awesome human for today, courtesy of podmatch.com, where podcast guests get to connect with podcast hosts. And if they're cool, they're freaking in. And today's guest is cooler than two cucumbers. Let me tell you a bit about him, because today's guest is not only a wonderful author of multiple books, a prolific writer, he's also a father, a grandfather, and a husband, y'all, as well as a speaker and a fellow leadership trainer and a business consultant. So let's give it up for the one and only Brad Dude. How you doing today, Brad?
Very good, Dom. Nice to be here.
It's indeed great to have you here. That's right, indeed. Especially those who are in the realms of leadership. One of the best topics in the world today for a lot of reasons.
You're right.
That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, my goodness, since it's your first time on the podcast, usually invite folks to share a bit about themselves so those listening around the globe can get a better feel from where you're coming from. So, mind sharing us a bit of how you got to where you are today, Brad?
Sure. I guess I got started with my career in leadership training when I was with the Peace Corps out in the Pacific, out in Micronesia, Central Pacific, and I ran training programs for new Peace Corps volunteers coming in, and then I became the the deputy director of that country, and I was an associate director in Samoa. So I got to learn firsthand about leadership because certainly in Micronesia, it's an area I was responsible for was kind of the size of the United States, except just spread out in tiny islands. So for an example, our headquarters would be the equivalent of being in Seattle out there. And we had offices, if you will, island groups in Southern California and in Texas and in New York and Florida. So a lot of travel, a lot of dealing with different issues, of course, different languages and different cultures to add to that. But that was kind of a wake-up call for me. And then after that, I joined Westinghouse, continued to do training all over the world, manage projects in the Middle East, and got to travel, I guess, 35 plus countries. So each one a little bit different, different challenges for leadership. So I got into doing training for new leaders, especially. And then a colleague of mine got me with his firm, and we bid on a contract to do leadership training for NASA. Goddard Space Flight Center, not too far from you, outside of DC, and ran a leadership course for them for about 9 years. So a lot of leadership, and along the way, kind of jotting down things, got into writing as well, journalism background. So I started writing books about leadership because I found that a lot of my participants, you have them for a week or you have them for a few days of training, and you don't really know what they take away. So I thought having a handout for them, having a book they can kind of refer back to would be helpful. So that's what got me into that.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. And one of the few that off the top of my head. I think you're the second one that at least have mentioned that they were part of the Peace Corps, and that's one heck of a way to really get into service and really leadership. Because hey, like you got to go to another country and really learn a whole different culture and really just be all about helping others, and that's one heck of a way to really start off a leadership journey. And my goodness, so penning all these things down, you pen quite a few books, if I'm not mistaken. Was it 8 or 7 books you have now?
I have 7 books. The last one, a little bit different. It's a novel. I kind of used leadership and kind of my background in temperament to develop characters that would demonstrate, illustrate leadership principles in kind of an action adventure kind of story. So that just came out. So I'm really excited about that and getting some good reviews on it too.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. And what made you want to decide to go the novel route? Did you get tired of talking about all the real life stuff, the leadership stuff, and you're like, let me go into the deep space, metaphorically speaking?
I think what happened really was that COVID hit about almost 2 years ago now. And so that kind of ended our ability, some of my colleagues and me, to do classroom training, leadership training, because there was no in-person training going on at all. So I did a few Zoom workshops with like 50 people, and it was fine, but it wasn't the same. You don't have that same interaction, when you're in person, face to face. So that ended. So I had some time, and I thought, well, I always liked action adventure films, especially, and novels, and so I wrote a screenplay of it first, and then I'm with a screenplay group here in New Orleans that meets once a month to give each other feedback and things like that, some advice. And it was suggested to go deeper into it with the time I had to write the novel to support it. So now I've got the screenplay as well as the novel. So it's called Finding Eden, and I've really enjoyed doing that.
Wow, that's huge right there. Definitely huge indeed. So finding Eden, I guess in a way you found your Eden in more ways than one of really diving into writing a novel. So what was it like switching from writing nonfiction to fiction?
Much harder. I found much harder, where I have, a lot of my experience. I can write from firsthand experience in my nonfiction and use examples that I've experienced myself in classrooms all over the world. But with the novel, a little different. You're kind of making it up. So it takes a lot of research. So I did a lot of research. The stories about migrants, African, Middle Eastern, and South Asian migrants trying to escape on the Mediterranean to get to Europe, and they're not able to go to into any port there because of their asylum seekers. So they find a kind of a remote island to be, and there's all shipwrecks and pirates and all kinds of cool things, in that. But to be accurate, I had to do a lot of research on the trials that those migrants go through to go through the Sahara. I wanted to be accurate, so I got all the different names of the places that they go through, and the French Foreign Legion is out there, and it's just a wild time to get to Libya, to catch a boat that tries to get them to Europe. So there's a lot of research that went into it, and then some of the characters, of course, I wanted some of them to be leaders, and other different groups. And so, it was a deep dive into some of their backgrounds and where they went to school and what got them to where they were getting on a ship to go try to find a safe place to live. So it was fascinating, but it was a lot. It took a lot more detail and research than I thought it was going to be to do the novel.
Yeah, that is true. It actually is interesting how like fiction novels definitely require a lot more research, sometimes maybe even more than certain nonfiction books, because it's like, hey, even though you're writing a fantasy novel, there's still going to be the occasional, hey, what are you talking about writing about like horses riding forever? Like they can only ride a certain amount of time before they give out. Like you didn't do your research. One
Yeah.
star on Amazon.
Exactly right. And I've been lucky to get a lot of 5 stars on Amazon for it so far. So I think the research has paid off. So I hope your listeners will take a shot at that. Also, I have it as an audiobook for it as well, and it's fascinating. I don't do the narration. We got a actual professional kind of an actor to do it, so it was really cool.
Ah, that's what I'm talking about indeed. So my goodness, so definitely the importance of research. Any other advice for those looking to write their first ever fiction novel when they've been in the clay of nonfiction for too long?
Well, obviously, like we talked about research, it'll take a lot more time than you might think. But also, you have to have I learned that you have to have a good editor. It can't just be your spouse kind of looking it over and saying, "Oh, that's nice, honey." So that doesn't cut it. You have to really get a professional editor to go through it and give you some feedback. And I had actually several editors take a shot at it, and you have to take it, right between the eyes sometimes, the feedback, but it's very helpful. I think it was for me, and I think it's resulted in a much better book.
Ah, beautiful indeed, beautiful indeed. And I feel like it doesn't stop there because you've actually written a screenplay or two before on top of that, right?
Yes. In fact, that's what got me into for Finding Eden. That got me into that too. So I've been doing kind of action adventure screenplays, kind of off and on between doing the nonfiction leadership books. So it wasn't though until I don't know 4 or 5 years ago when I joined this group here in New Orleans, a screenwriters group, and they're mostly people that do local stuff here in New Orleans, local TV and things like that. But they've been very helpful in giving each other all of us feedback on what we write and things like that. So I've enjoyed that. But I do like screenplays. I found them much easier because it's a kind of a genre that takes, you can't go more than about 110 pages, meaning 110 minutes on the screen. So you really have to focus. And so I kind of enjoyed that, doing it that way. Novel, just the opposite. You don't want to, you want to make that character come alive, and that takes a lot more explanation and research and background on each one.
Ah, beautiful indeed, beautiful indeed. So with all these irons in the fire, what's next for you?
I have a new screenplay that I'm working on. It's kind of takes me back to the Pacific, where those islands and where I was a volunteer as well for 3 years in the Marshall Islands, which is the site of a lot of U.S. atomic testing. And I had drafted a screenplay years ago about that and what happens to those folks that are that have to deal with the fallout, quote, so to speak, fallout of the atomic testing. But now they are very organized out there now in the Marshalls with climate change. Some of their low atolls, low-lying islands, are being swallowed up by the sea now, because of general warming of the oceans. And they have organized small island nations to lobby the larger countries through the United Nations. And so it's kind of again, action, mystery, adventure book kind of based on that issue. That's coming up.
Oh, so I'm talking about indeed. So I guess can't stop, won't stop, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a lot of fun. As long as it's fun, I'll keep doing that, I think. So
Ah, beautiful indeed, beautiful indeed. So since my man's got a wealth of wisdom, what would you probably consider your biggest setback that actually became your biggest setup for success?
I think my time in the Peace Corps as a staff member, there's a 5-year rule limitation to serve. And so after being a volunteer for 3 years on the Pacific and then staying out there a couple more years doing nothing but leadership training, and then being a staff member in two Pacific Island nations for another 5 years or so, when that was over, it's like, whoa, now what? The setback was I got to do some changes in my life, both physically moving back to the States after living overseas for over 10 years, to deciding what to do with training. And you get into that. So, and that led to success with Westinghouse and doing other kinds of project uh, management kinds of jobs. It took me all over the world. So for me, that was a big success after that quote setback of having, a lifestyle change.
I get you. That's right, indeed. That test of commitment, indeed.
Yeah.
That's right, indeed. A test of commitment, but hey, worked out, paid off for you. That's right,
It,
indeed. Probably got to add a bunch of stories to the wonderful repertoire.
yeah. And, it's you're kind of independent now as a consultant to folks and, investing in doing a nice website and getting people more involved. I have a new quiz that's out, a leadership quiz that I just put out. People can find that at www.braddude.com/quiz. And it's a 10-minute quiz, allows you to kind of think about how you are managing your employees and has some resources in there for you as well. So I'm getting some good feedback on that too. I hope some of your listeners can do that. Again, it's just braddude.com/quiz, takes them right to a cool little leadership quiz that I think it's a lot of fun, 10 questions, and gives some insight into how they are leading their own organizations.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. And it's probably extra useful nowadays in the times that we're in with a lot of stuff shifting still.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a leadership, definitely a moving target. I mean, if there was one way to do it, we'd all know it and we'd all be doing it. But that's not the case, obviously. And I put in my one of my books on that is that, the way you do your leadership, it's probably different than the way I do it. And even if we use the same tools, the way you apply that tool to a situation is going to be very different than the way I do it. So it's not a right or wrong. It's what's the success in that circumstance that you're trying to address. So it's a challenge. I use the idea of every leader should have a toolbox that they're trying to fill with new ideas, new concepts, new models. So in my next to the latest book, Quick, I Need to Be a Leader in 30 Days, the idea is how many tools, I'm trying to give them as many tools as I possibly can, the reader, so that they can apply it in their own situations. And there's a step-by-step, here's how you hit the ground running if you're a newly promoted leader.
Sounds good indeed. Sounds good indeed. So, what tool would you consider the hammer of the toolbox?
Well, for me, the hammer is this model that my late partner, Jim Harden, and I developed called the basic elements of temperament. Temperament is that part of our personality that influences how we view the world, how we view our organization, how we view our employees, our followers. And it's all about self-awareness. To me, that's the most important thing any leader, especially any new leader could begin to work on, is their temperament, understanding themselves better. And we have a model that we simplified. There's a lot of models, personality models out there. Some have 16 boxes, some have 9 boxes. We ask in our leadership classes at NASA, for an example, how many people have used these different kinds of personality tests, if you will, or models. And they raise their hand and then they say, okay, well, what's your score? And they don't remember. What does it mean? They don't remember. So we said, what we need is a very simple model that people can remember and make it useful to them. And so we use earth, air, fire, and water as the 4 basic ways of remembering temperament, because to be alive on our planet, you need earth, air, fire, and water. It's all part of the elements of life. So that's what we have used. Each one has different kinds of behaviors attached to it. And we're born with those. We have, all of us have all four of those temperaments. And in fact, the leadership quiz I mentioned gives you some feedback on your temperament for that. And it's also the temperament, it's how we view the world through our dominant temperament of the four. And the one that gets us in trouble is usually the fourth of our temperament, because our temperament, we have them, they're kind of like, I describe it as stacked plates in a restaurant. Top plate is your dominant temperament. That's how you view the world in general, and everything is normal as you look at it that way. The second plate is your secondary temperament, and it's very close to your dominant. It supports it. Your third plate is your tertiary temperament, and you're kind of neutral. When you see employees exhibiting those kinds of behaviors, whichever that is for you, earth, air, fire, or water, you're pretty neutral. You can live with it. It doesn't generate any emotion for you. The fourth one, the last plate, is what we call the shadow temperament. That's the one that gets us in trouble. That's the one when we see people, especially our followers or employees in our organizations, we see those behaviors, that typically bothers us. And we then start to have a mental map about those people. What's wrong with them? Why are they doing that? That's not right, because that's how we see it. And so we spent a lot of time in our NASA leadership classes, a whole day and a half, in fact, on temperament, and especially the shadow. Our dealing with the shadow temperament is kind of different than some of the other personality tests that you can typically take. So that's probably the biggest hammer that I have, is that model for any new leader, because it starts to improve your self-awareness. And that's, to me, a critical aspect of being an effective leader.
I can see that again. Definitely. Definitely that self-awareness indeed. Because hey, we gotta lead ourselves first, you know. So it's like, hey, when you lead yourself to eventually get that promotion, it's like, all right.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Well, I say in that book, and it's not just me, but that, research and many people, many authors will write that oftentimes we're promoted in our jobs because of our technical ability. We were the best architect, so now we become the supervising architect, or we're a really good engineer, so we become the supervisor of engineers. And if you are an effective leader, you're spending a lot of time doing leadership tasks, your technical skills will fade a little bit through the years. So the very thing that got you promoted, your skills are deteriorating. And so what do? If you don't know about leadership, all of a sudden there's a time gap. What am I supposed to do today? What I used to do is I was the best architect. So guess what you're going to do? You're going to look over the shoulders of those architects doing the work. And that's called micromanaging. And when you have a supervisor, hopefully you've never experienced that, Dom, where you had a supervisor looking over your shoulder, telling you, no, you got to do it this way. You got to do it that way. And that results in either you avoid that person totally, or every little thing you do, you give it to that supervisor for the okay. That slows down everything. It demoralizes the group, and you miss deadlines typically. So that's why the self-awareness aspect, I think, of leadership is so important, so you don't become micromanagers.
Definitely, definitely important indeed. And that's another facet of micromanagement that folks who micromanage don't even think about. It's like, hey, if you're nitpicking over every little thing and then they have to approve every little thing that they do to you that they have to give to the project, then you're basically slowing down the organization and you're limiting productivity.
Yeah, and you're hating life, aren't you? If
Yeah.
that kind of situation. If you're the leader, you don't realize you're micromanaging, and you're wondering, how come people are avoiding me, or how come people are not showing up, or how come we're always late with these reports or progress reports or presentation, and so it results in a not a good situation on your team, even your branch or your division. So that's important, I think, to look at for a new leader.
Definitely say that again, indeed. Definitely say that again, indeed. So, my goodness, with all this wonderful expertise you've been dropping on these podcasts you've been hearing on, is there a question that you wish podcast hosts would ask you more often?
I've done probably about 15 or 20 podcasts now, and usually people, the ones that they typically don't ask is about the titles of the books. It's like, quick, I need to be a leader in 30 days. Where did you come up with that? Or Finding Eden, where did you come up with that? And it's no big deal. It's just like, wow, I think I would have asked that question probably because it's kind of an odd title. So the quick, I need to be a leader in 30 days, that came about. If you want me to answer my own question,
Go ahead. That's
uh,
the point of the
uh,
question.
yeah, was about it's about the newly promoted leader who is probably an expert in what he does technically, but doesn't have a clue about being a leader. So what can I do? What do I need to learn so I can hit the ground running next month when I start? And so we put together actually the book. That book is written as if it's part of a training course. It's a self-directed training course that anybody can take, any reader can take, and it walks you through basically leadership models and principles, and then has reflection questions at the end of each week. And so I have it day by day. Day one, this is the book you should be reading or the article you should be reading. This is the activity you should be doing on the job. It might be just be an observation exercise, or it could be trying to lead your group, have a team meeting, something as simple as that. And then day two, okay, this is what you should be reading, doing. And then by the end of the week, we say you should have some kind of a mentor or coach or friend or somebody that you can talk to about your week of trying to do these leadership tasks. And that's all built in. Discussion questions, they're all built into the book on each day. So we go all the way from day 1 to day 30. And the idea is that if you've gone through that and kind of got your certificate at the end from your coach that you really did it, I say you're ready to hit the ground running. That's not the end of your journey. It's really the beginning of your leadership journey, but you're not walking in there, not knowing what's happening. You'll have a good sense of what's going on. So it deals with everything from self-awareness, and my basic elements model is in there, to looking at power in the organization. You now are a power person that maybe you weren't before, and what kind of the 3 types of power that are out there. Facilitation of small groups, asking questions, all the way down to looking at your organization. How to organize? Is it a flat organization? Who reports to who? And so we have you do the research on your own organization. Have you read your strategic plan? You may be the only one that has. In most organizations, I
Yeah.
find no, but they spend a lot of time writing them, but not a lot of time reading them. So that's the kind of thing. We thought we should have the course in person if we could, but this is a self-directed course in one book for readers. So that's an example of that title kind of making us think about how to do that book.
That's what I'm talking about right there. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. For a second, I was like, I thought it was probably Bugs Bunny that inspired the title. It's like, quick, make a run for it. Get the carrots. That's right indeed. Lead yourself to the carrots.
Yeah.
Avoid Elmer Fudd. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. So my goodness. Well, heck, even since you already mentioned quick, how about Finding Eden? What inspired that title? I'm pretty sure it wasn't just a Bob story.
Not at all. Although, yeah, there is some religious characters in the book that show a different kind of thing. Finding Eden, to me, it was what these poor migrants have no place to go, and they're running from the Taliban or other kinds of issues, seeking asylum. And sometimes they're with their family, and sometimes they're just leaving home to find a better life. And I felt that was a topical subject, given how our country deals, is challenged by our own immigration issues at the border. So I thought one that was a topical subject that I thought could be explored more. I had read articles, I think, about the challenges of getting across the Mediterranean. Some of these folks get up through Africa and they get to Libya and they get on these flimsy craft and try to make it and drown, along the way. There was a 5-year period, part of my research showed that there were like 8 people drowning a day trying to
Ooh.
cross. Oh, it was just terrible. My wife, in her work at Loyola University, is a migration specialist. So we discuss and we hear about these issues a lot. So it wasn't a foreign subject to me. So then I thought, well, finding a safe place is the goal of these folks. And what they really want to do is find their own Eden, is find a safe place to raise their family in safety. And so that's why the title made sense. Now I found that there are 4 or 5 other books called Finding Eden, and they're all romance novels. Mine is not a romance novel. Mine is action adventure. And so I thought that was kind of funny to find that you can't copyright titles. So there are several Finding Edens, but mine is Finding Even, a perilous quest for a safe migrant home. And so that title then to me encompassed the whole idea of searching for a safe place and then hopefully finding that place that you can be safe and settle down. And that's happened for some of our characters, but not all of our characters, because to me, that's the whole issue of migration and the challenge of asylum seekers and those just trying to find a better life. It's a continuing saga. There's no one right answer for it. And so I try to ask the question in there, the moral question for readers, I hope comes across, is what's the responsibility that parents have for their families? Do we stay where we are and make the best, even though it might be very dangerous? Or is it our responsibility to go wherever we need to go to take care of our family? And on the other side, it's what's the responsibility of countries like the United States or European countries? What's our responsibility to maintain the safety of our own citizens? But what's our responsibility to help others who are in danger? So there's no easy answer, but I thought it would make for a cool story. And I hope that will be the case. I hope your listeners will find that to be the case.
So I'm talking about indeed. So if Finding Eden were a food, what would it be and why?
Finding Eden, I think it would be a loaf of bread. It's that sustenance of life. It's that idea that home is where we make it. I quote Voltaire in the book to start it off. Wherever we find ourselves, we can make it our home. So whether it's on a remote little island full of pirates that we have to overcome, or is it outside the border in Mexico waiting for our case to come up in court so we can become citizens or get green cards or whatever. That's what what life is all about for those folks today. So I wanted to show that. And that's why for me, bread is the sustenance of life, if you will. And so I think that has a lot to do with what I was trying to get across in the book.
That's right indeed. You heard that right, folks. It's the whole loaf. It ain't just a slice of two for a sandwich. It's the whole loaf, y'all. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. You're going to feed a whole group with this book, y'all. That's right. That's right indeed. You're going to find that Eden. That's right indeed. You'll get the manna from on high. That's right indeed. Metaphorically, of course.
Of course.
Oh man. So my goodness, coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive, and that is if you're to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again, but you're still in the current year, what advice would you give to yourself?
Wow. I think if I woke up and I was 25 years old again, I would tell myself several things. I think I would tell myself to learn another language. I think I would tell myself to not take things too seriously all the time. I would say I need to know myself a little bit better than I did when I was 25 the first time. And I would say I would try to write more.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Solid advice right there, indeed. Rock solid. Boulder, Colorado, solid even. That's right, indeed. A whole Boulder. That's right, indeed. Learn that second language, learn a new language, do some more writing. That's right, indeed. Give yourself that advantage. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Set yourself apart from the crowd. You'll be the cream. That's right, indeed. You'll be at the top. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Well, I know folks need to be on top of mind and have you on top of their minds. So for those need to do just that and keep in contact with you and buy copies of your marvelous books, what's the best way for folks to do so?
I think the best way is to go right to my website because there's a link there to my quiz and to all my books, and it's www.braddude.com. So that's BRADDUDE.com. And that'll get you to all the books and links you to Amazon. And I hope they take a look at those books. And I hope for some listeners, they prefer the audiobooks, especially some of my younger uh, fans, if you will. My son's age in his late mid 30s now. They really like audiobooks, and it's a great audiobook, I must say, for Finding Eden. The rest are all either ebooks or hard paperback books. So braddude.com should do the trick.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. Head off to Brad's wonderful site, indeed. That's right, indeed. We're going to put a link to that in the show notes because Brad is that dude. Indeed, y'all. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. My man's got you covered. That's right, indeed. If you're a brand new leader or you're a seasoned leader looking for some more reinforcing on the stuff you already know, and heck, if you want to take a break, he's got you covered with some good action adventure fabulosity with Finding Eden, indeed. So he's got you covered on both sides of the brain, y'all. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, any parting word before we close up shop?
Just, Don, to thank you for having me on the show. I think the kind of a takeaway for those considering leadership is that you can be a leader no matter where you are in the organization and where you sit. You don't have to be the quote, the boss to be a leader. There are many things you can do, and I hope my books will be helpful in providing you with the skills and concepts and models that will fill up your toolbox and make you better leaders.
Thanks a bunch for tuning in and setting aside some of your time to listen to this wonderful podcast, Going North. If you really enjoyed what you heard, do me a solid and share this with your network and someone that you care about that would get something out of it too.